At the family dinner, the room buzzed with laughter and wine glasses clinking. She sat at the far end of the long table, wearing the only dress she could afford, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Then, out of nowhere, he raised his glass, smirked, and called her a poor, fat pig. The table fell silent for a second, then erupted into cruel laughter. One cousin covered his mouth, trying not to spit out his drink. His sister whispered, "She really doesn't belong here." Someone else snapped a photo as he leaned back in his chair, proud of his joke. Her face burned as dozens of eyes turned to her. She forced a brittle smile, blinking back tears as the humiliation washed over her in waves. Not a single person defended her. Even the waiters froze awkwardly. She stayed quiet that night. No outbursts, no dramatic exits. Just quiet, searing pain. Everyone thought she would go home and cry. But later that night, at a high-profile corporate gala, the entire room would see a different side of her. Cameras flashed. His father's face turned ghost white. And in one breathtaking moment, the woman they mocked was revealed as the billionaire who bought their company. This is the story of one brutal insult, a night she'll never forget, and a twist that silenced them all. What do you think happened next? Hello, family. Welcome back. Before we begin, I have a small but heartfelt request. Please subscribe. Your support is what keeps these stories alive. Every time you click that button, you're helping us share voices that would otherwise be forgotten and stories that deserve to be heard. And in the comments, tell us where you're watching from, because together, we are not just telling stories, we are keeping hope alive. Chandeliers sparkled above the long glass table, casting warm light on silver cutlery and tall wine glasses. The air buzzed with the kind of laughter that wasn't really kind. Sharp, echoing, full of pride. Claire Thompson sat quietly at the far end of the table, her hands folded in her lap. Her dress was simple, pale blue, clean, but modest. It wasn't the designer brand her mother-in-law preferred. Her shoes were the same pair she'd worn to last year's family dinner. Across the table, Ryan's voice carried over the chatter, loud and confident. He was telling another story about a deal he supposedly closed. The waiters smiled politely, refilling glasses. Everyone was performing, pretending, playing parts. Claire didn't fit in, and she knew it. She wasn't trying to. Ryan's mother, Margaret, leaned forward, eyes sharp as ever. "Claire, dear, did you finally do something with your hair?" Claire offered a small smile. "Just washed it, Mrs. Thompson." Margaret chuckled. "Well, it looks better. I told Ryan you needed a stylist. Appearances matter, especially for a Thompson." Edward, Ryan's father, gave a low grunt of agreement without looking up from his steak. "It's not just about looks, Margaret. It's about presence. Some people just don't have it." The jab landed. Claire caught it but said nothing. She took a sip of her water, eyes on her plate. Ryan laughed. "Oh, come on, Dad. Claire's got presence, like a librarian no one listens to." Laughter rippled around the table. Claire smiled politely again, that small, practiced smile she wore like armor. Evelyn, sitting beside her, shifted uncomfortably. She wasn't part of the family, just a +1 invited to fill a seat. She squeezed Claire's hand under the table, whispering, "Breathe." Claire did, slowly, deeply. Ryan leaned back in his chair, draping an arm behind Vanessa, his secretary, who'd somehow found her way to the dinner as his assistant. Everyone pretended not to notice. "So, Claire," Ryan said loudly, "what did you do all day?" "Bake something. Watch those little motivational videos again." A few cousins snickered. Claire's throat tightened, but she spoke softly, steady. "I was working on a few things." Ryan smirked. "Working on what?" "Laundry." The laughter hit again, louder this time. Margaret clinked her glass. Ryan, stop teasing your wife. She's sensitive. Ryan grinned, unbothered. Sensitive? Mum, she's a marshmallow. You poke her once, and she melts. Evelyn turned sharply. That's not funny. Ryan looked at her. Relax, Evelyn. We're just joking. Claire knows I love her. He reached over and patted Claire's cheek, not gently. The gesture felt like ownership, not affection. Then he stood, raising his glass. All right, everyone, he said, voice booming. Before we dig into dessert, I'd like to make a toast. Claire's stomach sank. Here we go, Evelyn muttered. Ryan's grin widened. To my wife, he began, living proof that love is charity. A few gasps, then laughter, hesitant at first, then growing. He wasn't done. She eats like a queen, he added, swirling his wine, but somehow still looks like a poor, fat pig. The table exploded with laughter. Even Margaret chuckled into her napkin. One cousin covered his mouth to stop wine from spilling. Someone else actually clapped. Evelyn's eyes went wide. Ryan, she hissed. But the room was already echoing with the sound of mockery, laughter, whispers, the clinking of glasses. Claire froze. The sound blurred. The laughter echoed around her like waves, each one crashing harder. Her face burned. Her throat tightened, but she wouldn't give them tears. Not tonight. She looked at Ryan, at the man who once promised her forever, and smiled faintly. It wasn't real, but it was steady. Good one, she said softly, her voice trembling only slightly. Ryan laughed louder, proud of himself. See? She gets it. Evelyn reached for her hand again, whispering, Claire, we can leave. We don't have to stay. Claire shook her head. No. Let him finish. She sat there until the laughter faded into new conversations. People went back to their meals. The moment, for everyone else, was over. But for her, it had only just begun. When dinner ended, Ryan grabbed her coat from the waiter, or rather, tossed it at her. Come on, sweetheart, he said. Don't sulk. You looked miserable all night. I wasn't miserable, she said quietly. I was thinking. About what? Your next shopping list? He laughed and walked ahead. Evelyn caught Claire's arm before she followed. You don't deserve this, she whispered. I know, Claire said softly. But he'll know too. One day, the night air outside was cool. The black car waited at the curb, the driver already holding the door open. Ryan slid into the back seat first, still half smiling, scrolling through his phone. As soon as the door shut, his tone changed. Don't start, he said sharply without looking up. You embarrassed me in there. Claire blinked. I didn't say a word. That's the point. You just sat there like a ghost. Everyone noticed. I didn't want to make a scene, she said quietly. You could have laughed, or said something playful. Instead, you just froze. It made me look bad. Claire stared out the window. The streetlights blurred by. You made yourself look bad, Ryan. His head snapped toward her. What did you say? Nothing. Yeah, that's what I thought. He leaned back, muttering, God, sometimes I wonder why I even try. You're lucky I take you anywhere. She said nothing. The silence grew heavy. Ryan scrolled through his phone again, smirking at something. Claire caught a glimpse of a message from Vanessa. You were hilarious tonight. He chuckled under his breath. She gets my humor. You should take notes. Claire didn't answer. Her eyes stayed on the window, her reflection pale and calm. The car slowed as Edward's voice came from the front seat. He was on the phone, speaking low but urgent. Yes, I got the documents, he said. Tomorrow night, right? The acquisition deal. Who's the investor again? A pause. Silver Line Ventures, he said, finally nodding. Never heard of them. Claire's fingers tightened on her lap. Her eyes flickered for just a second, sharp, alert. Silverline Ventures. Her company. Her real life. The one she built before Ryan decided to break her piece by piece. Edward continued talking. As long as they save us from this bankruptcy mess, I don't care who they are. The word bankruptcy hit Ryan like a slap. What bankruptcy? He demanded. Edward hung up. It's business, son. Nothing you need to worry about, Dad, Ryan said, frowning. Are we broke? Edward gave a forced chuckle. Of course not. It's just a negotiation. But Claire saw the sweat on his neck, the stiffness in his shoulders. She saw everything. She looked at him for a moment, not as her father-in-law, but as the man who would soon answer to her. She turned back to the window, her reflection framed by the glow of city lights. Her eyes, once full of pain, were calm now. Cold. Ryan was still talking. Something about his new car, a weekend trip, another joke about her weight. She wasn't listening anymore. All she could hear was Edward's voice echoing in her head. Silverline Ventures tomorrow night. The acquisition deal. Her heart beat slow and steady. Let them laugh, she thought. Let them mock, insult, and look down on me. Because tomorrow their world would shift, and they wouldn't even see it coming. The car pulled up to their mansion. Ryan got out first, slamming the door. Try not to look so miserable next time, all right? People might think I'm torturing you or something. He laughed at his own joke and walked inside. Claire stayed in the car for a moment, watching his shadow disappear through the doorway. She exhaled softly, a long breath she'd been holding for years. Then she whispered to her reflection in the window, voice calm, quiet, and certain. Let them laugh, she said. They'll choke on it soon enough. If you haven't subscribed yet, we'd love for you to join our community by hitting the subscribe button. Through our stories we build hope and give a future to children and women who have been abused all over the world. Motivate us by subscribing and turning on your notification bell so you never miss a story that matters. Also, let us know in the comments. Where are you watching from, and how did this story speak to you? The next morning, sunlight streamed through the wide bedroom windows, hitting the silk curtains and the edge of the king-size bed. The mansion was quiet, except for the faint sound of Ryan's phone buzzing on the nightstand. Claire lay awake, staring at the ceiling. She hadn't really slept. The dinner replayed in her mind, the laughter, the whispers, the word pig echoing like a bell she couldn't unhear, but under the sting of humiliation, something else had woken up inside her. Something that had been asleep for a long time. Ryan stirred beside her, snoring lightly. His face looked peaceful, almost boyish. Funny, she thought. Cruel people always looked innocent when they slept. The phone buzzed again. A new message. She turned her head slightly and saw the preview flash across the screen. Vanessa. Morning, handsome. Miss you already. Claire didn't flinch. Not anymore. She just watched the screen fade to black. Downstairs, the housekeeper was setting breakfast when Claire walked into the kitchen. She tied her hair back, poured herself some coffee, and stood quietly by the window. Ryan walked in minutes later, his tie half done, phone pressed to his ear. Yeah, tell the driver to be ready by 9, he said sharply. No, not the black car, the silver one. I don't want to look like a politician. He glanced at her between sentences. Morning, he said, tone flat. Morning. Don't forget we're having dinner with the Palmers tonight. Wear something simple. Simple? You know what I mean. Not one of those cheap floral things you like. Something elegant, but not loud. You stand next to me, not in front. He hung up and grabbed a piece of toast. By the way, he added, mouth full, Vanessa's coming with me to the office today. We're going over some client reports. Claire sipped her coffee. Of course. Ryan glanced at her suspiciously. Don't start, okay? You get weird every time I mention her. I'm not weird, she said softly. I just listen. He smirked. Well, stop listening so much. It's not attractive. And just like that he was gone. The door closed. The sound of his car faded down the driveway. Claire set her cup down, steady hands, calm eyes. Then she pulled her phone from her robe pocket and pressed a contact labeled E. The line clicked. You up early? Evelyn's voice came through, warm and teasing. Claire's tone was steady. I'm ready. For what? Evelyn asked, though she already knew. For everything. The screen on Claire's desk lit up, displaying a clean, modern logo, Silverline Ventures. The name had started as a joke. Years ago, when she and Evelyn were broke 20-somethings sharing a tiny apartment, Evelyn had said, You always look for the silver lining, even when life hits hard. Claire had smiled then and said, Then maybe that's what I'll call my company someday. And she did. Before Ryan. Before the mansion. Before she'd learned what cruelty looked like behind closed doors. Back then, she was just Claire Bennett, a data analyst with a mind for numbers and a dream to build something real. She'd met Evelyn during a business seminar. They clicked instantly, two women with the same hunger to create, the same frustration with being ignored by men who thought they were too emotional for business. Together, they built Silverline Ventures. It started small, analytics for small businesses, software investments, quiet partnerships. Within 5 years, it was worth millions. They were partners in every sense, brains, trust, friendship. Then Ryan came along. He was charming, smooth, confident. He made her laugh, made her feel noticed after years of being invisible. He called her brilliant until the day they married. Then suddenly, he called her overly ambitious, distracted, too focused on work. When he found out about Silverline Ventures, he laughed. You? Running a company? Claire, come on. That's adorable. She remembered that night vividly. They were sitting in the living room, a glass of wine in his hand, papers on her lap. He glanced at them and scoffed. Baby, you don't have to pretend anymore, he said. You married into real success. Leave the business stuff to the pros. You mean men like you? She asked quietly. Exactly, he said, missing the insult entirely. It's cute you tried, though. The next week, he suggested she sell her shares and quit. She didn't argue. She just smiled and told him she would. But she didn't. Instead, she transferred her shares to Evelyn, who held them in trust. Her name vanished from every legal document. But her power, her influence, never left. Ryan thought she was just his stay-at-home wife. The truth? Every morning after he left, she slipped into her home office, turned on her encrypted laptop, and ran one of the fastest-growing investment firms in the country. Quietly, efficiently, invisibly. That afternoon, she was in that same office, hair tied back, glasses on, fingers moving quickly across the keyboard. Her screen showed graphs, figures, and stock projections. Her phone buzzed again, a video call from Evelyn. Morning, boss lady, Evelyn said with a grin. Behind her was the sleek downtown office of Silverline Ventures. How's life in the castle? Claire smirked. Still a circus. Ryan being Ryan. Worse. He compared me to Vanessa again. Evelyn rolled her eyes. Vanessa? The secretary who dresses like a perfume ad. That's the one. What did he say this time? Claire imitated his tone perfectly. You could learn something from Vanessa. She knows how to look like she belongs in a room. Evelyn groaned. Ugh. The man's a walking cliché. Claire smiled faintly. He's consistent. I'll give him that. Evelyn leaned forward. So, are you ready for this week? We closed the Thompson acquisition on Friday. Edward signed the preliminary papers yesterday. Claire's expression didn't change, but her eyes sharpened. And Ryan still doesn't know? Not a clue, Evelyn said. He's probably still bragging about his family's fortune. Claire let out a quiet breath. Evelyn, you're sure this is the right move? Evelyn nodded. Claire, they mocked you. They broke you down for years. You don't owe them softness. You owe yourself peace. Claire's gaze dropped. I didn't start this to win, Evelyn. Then why? She looked straight into the camera. I started this to end it. Evelyn nodded slowly. Then let's end it. Hours later, Claire stood in the laundry room folding Ryan's shirts. The silence in the mansion was heavy, the only sound the soft hum of the dryer. She picked up one of his white dress shirts, neatly pressed, expensive fabric. The faint scent of cologne lingered on it, but beneath it was something else, a trace of perfume that wasn't hers. Sweet, cheap, floral. Vanessa's. For a moment she just stared at the shirt, not angry, not sad, just done. She folded it carefully, placed it on top of the others, and smiled, a small, knowing smile that didn't reach her eyes. That night, Ryan came home late, laughing into his phone as he walked through the door. Yeah, she totally believed I was working late, he said, chuckling. You're too good, Vanessa. See you tomorrow. He hung up and turned to Claire, who was sitting at the dining table sorting through papers. Still awake? He asked. You didn't have to wait up. She looked at him calmly. I wasn't waiting. He raised a brow. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing, she said simply. Just not waiting. He stared at her for a moment, confused. Whatever. Don't forget, the gala's this weekend. My parents want us to look perfect. Try not to wear that old dress again. She nodded slowly. Of course. He smirked, satisfied, and walked upstairs. When she heard his footsteps fade, she whispered to the empty room. Enjoy it while it lasts. Her phone lit up beside her. A text from Evelyn. Contract signed. We own Thompson Holdings as of Friday morning. Claire stared at the message for a long moment, then turned off her phone and whispered into the dark. He has no idea what's coming. She stood, walked to the window, and looked out over the city. The same city that once ignored her, belittled her, and laughed at her dreams. Now it was hers, and soon, the man who mocked her would finally understand what it meant to be small. The ballroom shimmered under golden chandeliers. Music drifted softly through the air, slow, elegant, expensive. Waiters glided between tables carrying champagne glasses that sparkled under the light. Reporters hovered near the entrance, snapping photos as black cars pulled up one after another. The banners hanging above the stage read, A New Era, Silverline Ventures, ex-Thompson Holdings. It was the biggest corporate event of the year, a merger celebration disguised as a social parade. For most people, it was just another gala. For Claire, it was Judgment Day. Ryan and his father, Edward, arrived first. Cameras flashed as they stepped out of their car. Ryan wore a crisp black tuxedo, his hair slicked back. Beside him, Vanessa, his secretary, shimmered in a tight red dress. Reporters leaned in. Mr. Thompson, who's your guest tonight? Ryan grinned. My assistant. Couldn't do business without her. Vanessa giggled, pretending to be shy. Inside, Edward greeted investors, smiling stiffly. His handshake was firm, but his eyes carried exhaustion. The company had been on the verge of collapse for months, and this merger, this mysterious acquisition, had saved him. But deep down, he didn't trust anything he couldn't control. He scanned the crowd, his thoughts distant. The name Silverline Ventures played in his head like an echo. He had done his research, or tried to. The company was nearly invisible. No public. CEO, no press interviews, only a few quiet board members. It was like a ghost empire. And somehow, that ghost owned his family now. Claire arrived 20 minutes later. Her car stopped quietly at the side entrance. No reporters, no flashbulbs, no red carpet. Just her, calm, radiant, and dressed in a dark emerald gown that shimmered only when the light caught it. Her makeup was soft, her hair swept into a low chignon. She wore no flashy jewelry except for a thin silver bracelet. The first gift she'd ever bought herself after Silverline turned a profit. As she entered, heads turned. She didn't stride like she owned the place. She simply moved with quiet confidence, graceful, unhurried. Ryan saw her across the room and groaned. Finally, he muttered. She actually showed up. Vanessa leaned toward him. She looks different tonight. Ryan smirked. Please, she's trying too hard. Watch, she'll probably trip on her heels before dessert. When Claire reached their table, Ryan didn't even stand. Took you long enough, he said, sipping his drink. Try not to embarrass me tonight, all right? Claire smiled politely. I'll do my best. Her voice was calm. Too calm. Edward glanced at her. For the first time that evening, something flickered in his eyes. Confusion, then realization. He studied her face, her poise, the way she glanced at the stage and the sponsor's banner. He'd seen that expression before, not at a dinner, but in a boardroom. Recognition dawned. He knew, but he said nothing. Not yet. Dinner began. Waiters served steak and wine, conversations flowing around the table. Ryan, of course, dominated the moment. Loud, charming, confident. So, Vanessa, he said, leaning close to her, I was just telling Dad about that spreadsheet you built for the marketing pitch. She's a genius with numbers. Vanessa smiled, pretending modesty. Just doing my job. Ryan turned toward Claire. Remember when you tried to help me with finances, honey? You messed up the formulas so bad the accountant called it a crime against Excel. The table laughed. Claire didn't. She just cut her steak slowly, one precise motion at a time. Edward cleared his throat. Ryan, maybe enough jokes for tonight. Ryan chuckled. Relax, Dad. She's used to it. Aren't you, babe? Claire looked up at him. Her eyes were cool, unreadable. Used to it, yes. Amused by it? No. Ryan blinked. The tone, calm, sharp, controlled, caught him off guard. Vanessa giggled awkwardly. You two are so funny. Claire turned to her. You think so? Totally, Vanessa said, smiling nervously. Good, Claire replied softly. You'll need your sense of humor before the night's over. Edward's fork froze mid-air. He leaned closer to Ryan. Don't say another word, he whispered. Ryan frowned. What's your problem? Edward's voice was low. Just stop. Ryan laughed quietly. Dad, come on. I'm just teasing. She's fine. Edward didn't answer. His gaze stayed on Claire, who now seemed entirely at ease, too at ease for a woman being mocked in front of an audience. Something was coming. He could feel it. As dessert plates were cleared, the music shifted. The MC walked onto the stage, microphone in hand, smiling wide. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, tonight we celebrate a monumental partnership, the acquisition of Thompson Holdings by the visionary team at Silverline Ventures. Applause filled the room. Ryan clapped loudly, grinning. Vanessa leaned in, whispering, Do we know who this Silverline person is? Ryan shrugged. Some rich geek with too much money. Who cares? They just saved our family. Edward said nothing. His face was pale, eyes locked on the MC. The man continued, voice booming. And now, it's my honor to introduce the CEO of Silverline Ventures, the woman behind this historic deal. The lights dimmed, a single spotlight turned toward the side of the stage, and there she was, Claire. Every head turned, murmurs swept through the room, cameras flashed like lightning. Ryan froze, his fork slipping from his hand. Edward didn't move. He just whispered, Oh my God! Vanessa's mouth dropped open. Wait, is that... Ryan forced a laugh. No way! This is some kind of joke, right? The host gestured toward her. Please welcome Mrs. Claire Thompson. The room erupted in applause, confused, hesitant, disbelieving applause. Claire stepped onto the stage with steady steps, her expression calm and professional. The microphone gleamed in her hand as she smiled politely at the audience. "Good evening," she began. Her voice was smooth, confident, echoing across the silent ballroom. "It's an honor to stand before you tonight. Silverline Ventures has spent years investing in innovation, in people, in potential, sometimes even where others failed to see it." Her eyes scanned the crowd, and then found Ryan. He looked stunned, color draining from his face. Claire's tone shifted slightly, still polite but sharper now. "When we look at companies like Thompson Holdings, we see history. We see families. We see the lessons that built them. And sometimes, the lessons they forgot." A ripple moved through the room. Edward bowed his head slightly, unable to meet her eyes. Claire smiled faintly. "And to my husband," she said, her voice soft but clear. "Thank you for teaching me what not to settle for." A gasp spread across the hall. Cameras flashed like wildfire. Ryan jumped up from his chair. "This isn't funny, Claire," he shouted. "Tell them you're joking." Claire tilted her head. "Do I look like I'm joking, Ryan?" He stared at her, panic rising. You can't be the CEO. You quit that stupid company years ago." She stepped closer to the edge of the stage, eyes locked on him. "That's what you thought." Vanessa tried to whisper something to him, but he waved her off, face red, hands shaking. The MC, sensing the drama, tried to smooth things over. "Let's, give another round of applause for Mrs. Thompson." But the audience wasn't clapping. They were watching, every eye on Ryan, every camera recording. Ryan turned to his father, desperate. "Dad, do something." Edward's voice was quiet. "I told you to stop talking." Ryan's face twisted. "You knew?" Edward sighed, his tone hollow. "I knew. Tonight." Ryan looked back at Claire, his words stumbling. "You set me up." "You humiliated me in front of everyone," Claire smiled slightly. "No, Ryan. You did that all by yourself. I just stopped cleaning up after you," the crowd murmured. Reporters whispered to each other, snapping photos. Claire turned back to the microphone. "To everyone here, I look forward to building a better, stronger future for Thompson Holdings. A future where dignity and respect are valued more than ego and greed." Then she looked straight at Ryan one last time. "You taught me how to fight, Ryan. You just never imagined I'd win." Applause burst out, genuine this time, loud and echoing. Ryan stood there, stunned, before storming out of the ballroom, Vanessa scrambling after him. Edward stayed seated, eyes low, realization heavy on his face. Claire stepped off the stage, handing the microphone to the MC. Evelyn met her near the back, eyes wide with pride. "You did it," Evelyn whispered. Claire exhaled slowly, calm and controlled. "No," she said. "It's only the beginning." At the far end of the ballroom, the cameras continued to flash, catching Edward's empty stare and the vacant chair beside him. And in the quiet space between applause and whispers, one truth hung heavy in the air. The woman they mocked, ignored and humiliated had just become their boss. The night of the gala would be remembered for years. The story of the mocked wife who owned. It all spread like wildfire. By morning, every major news outlet had the same headline. Claire Thompson, CEO of Silverline Ventures, shocks industry by acquiring her husband's family company. And underneath it, a photo of Ryan's stunned face at the gala, mouth open, humiliation frozen forever in pixels. The video of him calling her a poor, fat pig during that infamous family dinner resurfaced next, leaked anonymously online. No one knew who had shared it, but everyone knew who benefited from it. Within 24 hours, the internet had chosen its hero and its villain. Claire became a symbol, the woman who rose from ridicule to power. Ryan became a meme. Clips of his cruel jokes circulated with captions like "Karma in heels" and "Guess who's broke now?" He tried to deny the video, claiming it was edited, but the damage was done. Sponsors pulled back. Friends stopped returning his calls. The same people who used to laugh at Claire's expense now laughed at him. At Thompson Holdings, everything changed. Edward called an emergency board meeting 3 days later. His face was drawn, his voice hollow. "I'm stepping down," he announced. "Effective immediately. Claire will assume full control as CEO." The room buzzed with murmurs. "She's the majority shareholder," Edward continued. "This is the only way to protect the company's future." He looked across the table at Claire, his expression a mix of defeat and reluctant respect. "You won," he said quietly. "You played the game better than any of us." Claire met his eyes calmly. "It was never a game to me, Edward. It was survival." He nodded once, then stood and left the room without another word. Ryan didn't take it well. He showed up at her office the next day, disheveled, angry, and desperate. "Claire," he barked, slamming the door behind him. "What the hell did you do?" "You made me a joke." She didn't look up from her papers. "No, Ryan. You made yourself a joke. I just let people see it." He paced the room, fuming. "I can fix this. We can do interviews. Tell people it was all part of some misunderstanding. We'll say the deal was mutual." Claire looked up, her expression unreadable. "You think this is about PR? It's about reputation," he shouted. "No," she said softly, standing now. "It's about respect." "Something you never gave me," he laughed bitterly. "You think anyone's going to respect you? You humiliated your husband in public." "Correction," she said evenly. "I revealed the truth in public. You did the humiliating all by yourself." He clenched his fists. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" Claire tilted her head. "No, Ryan. I'm just done pretending it doesn't hurt." For a moment, they stood there in silence, the air thick with years of resentment. Then Ryan scoffed and stormed out, slamming the door so hard the glass rattled. By the weekend, his life began to unravel. Vanessa, his beloved secretary, stopped answering his calls. When he finally reached her, she sounded cold. "Ryan," she said flatly, "I can't be seen with you right now. The company's under her control, and everyone's talking. It's bad for my image." "Your image?" he said, voice cracking. "I lost everything because of you." "Because of me?" She laughed. "No, you lost everything because you couldn't keep your mouth shut." The line went dead. Ryan hurled his phone across the room. It hit the wall and shattered. Meanwhile, Margaret Thompson made her move. She showed up unannounced at Claire's office, her designer heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. Claire was reviewing reports with Evelyn when the receptionist buzzed her. "She insists it's urgent," the receptionist whispered. "Send her in," Claire said quietly. Margaret swept into the office like a storm, flawless makeup, cold smile. "Claire, dear," she began, sitting without being invited. "I came to talk about my son." Claire leaned back, expression calm. "Of course you did." Margaret folded her hands. "You've made your point. You've punished him enough. The video, the press, it's everywhere. But destroying him won't heal you." Claire's gaze stayed steady. "You think this is about revenge?" Margaret smiled thinly. "It's always about revenge with women like you." "Women like me?" Claire repeated softly. "Yes," Margaret said. "Emotional, vindictive, unable to move on." Claire stood and walked slowly to the window, looking out over the city skyline. "You're wrong," she said finally. "I'm not destroying his life, Margaret." Margaret raised an eyebrow. "No?" Claire turned to face her, voice cool as glass. "I'm freeing mine, after years of them." The older woman stiffened. "I used to think silence was strength," Claire continued. "That if I stayed calm, things would get better. But silence only feeds bullies. So I stopped being silent." Margaret stood abruptly, her composure cracking for the first time. "You'll regret this." "No," Claire said. He will. Margaret stormed out. Evelyn exhaled. That woman's ice. Claire smiled faintly. She melts just like everyone else when the truth burns long enough. The tabloids had a field day when Claire filed for divorce. From mocked wife to billionaire boss. Claire Thompson ends marriage, keeps empire. Ryan Thompson, the husband who laughed too soon. Her photo was everywhere. Magazines, TV segments, social media feeds. She didn't grant interviews. She didn't need to. Her silence spoke louder than any statement. Evelyn handled the press, fielding calls while Claire focused on work. Together, they restructured Thompson Holdings from the inside out. They fired corrupt executives, promoted hard-working employees, and introduced programs that supported women in leadership. When one reporter asked why she cared so much about female empowerment, Claire answered simply, "Because I know what it feels like to have a voice no one listens to." Her words went viral. 1 week later, she met with Edward for the last time. He looked older now, smaller somehow. "You've done what you came to do," he said. "You've proven your point. What happens now?" Claire studied him for a moment. "Now, we rebuild. But differently." He nodded slowly. "I underestimated you." "Most people did," she said gently. "That's how I won." He managed a sad smile. "Take care of the company. It deserves better than what we gave it." "I intend to," she replied. He stood, hesitated, then extended his hand. She shook it. No bitterness, just closure.